Hi everyone, today's lesson is going to focus on the process of photosynthesis. And as you can guess from this picture here, this is a process that involves plants and sunlight. Our essential questions for today's lesson include, how does the sun supply living things with the energy that they need? So our objective for today's lesson is to answer that question. You should be able to explain how the sun supplies living things with energy they need, and also describe what happens during the process of photosynthesis. So let's think about plants for a second. What do plants need to make their own food? Think about it. If you want a plant to grow and survive, what kinds of things does a plant need? You may be thinking soil, maybe water. You have to water your plants. Sunlight. Plants need sunlight in order to grow. Well, that's because they use this process called photosynthesis. They need three things to make their own food for photosynthesis to happen. They actually need carbon dioxide from the air. They need water from their environment. And they also need sunlight for energy to power this process. So plants use three things: water, carbon dioxide, and the sun's energy to make their own food in this process of photosynthesis. So what they do is they take the water and the carbon dioxide, and they use the energy from the sun to turn those into sugar, which is food for them and also food for us, and oxygen. So oxygen's kind of like a byproduct of this, and they actually let oxygen out into the air, which is actually really good because we actually need oxygen. So we breathe out carbon dioxide, take in oxygen. Plants do the opposite. They need carbon dioxide for photosynthesis to happen, and they release oxygen into the environment. Okay, so like I said earlier, there's a special part in these autotrophs, a special part in their cells that allows them to make their own food. Remember, structure equals function, so they have to have the structure in order to do the job. All right, think back to all the different organelles that we learned about, the organelles that are associated with energy. There's a special organelle that plants have in their cells that allow them to make their own food. It's the food factory for the cell. Do you remember what that's called? Can you remember what the food factory of the cell is? It's the little green organelle, and it's only really found in plant cells. That's the chloroplast. Photosynthesis takes place in the chloroplasts. And fun fact, that's actually what makes the plants green. Chloroplasts contain a pigment called chlorophyll, and chlorophyll is responsible for photosynthesis. So that's what makes those plants green, is the chlorophyll in the chloroplasts. So during photosynthesis, plants use energy from the sun to convert that carbon dioxide and water into oxygen and sugars. We can represent this with something called a chemical equation. A chemical equation is a short, easy way to show a chemical reaction like photosynthesis. So here, the reactants are shown before the arrow, and the products are shown after the arrow. The reactants are the things that go into the equation or into the reaction. So carbon dioxide and water are the two things that go into this reaction. They are the reactants. And with the help of energy from the sun that helps this reaction take place, we then get the products. In this case, sugar and oxygen. Okay, so why is photosynthesis so important? We know it's important for plants, but why is it really important for all life? Let's take a look at this diagram. It kind of gives us an idea of how this works in an ecosystem. So the sun is the source of energy for most living things. Well, we know it's the source of energy for plants because plants use that energy to make their own food. Okay? But then that energy travels up something called a food chain. And we're going to look at food chains a little bit later in this school year. But here's just kind of a preview. Okay? Plants such as grass use energy from the sun to make their food. Then the zebra, which is a heterotroph, obtains energy by eating grass. The lion then obtains energy by feeding on the zebra. So you can see that the energy from the sun comes into an ecosystem through autotrophs like plants, and then heterotrophs get their energy by eating those autotrophs or other heterotrophs. So to sum this all up, nearly all living things obtain energy directly, like autotrophs, or indirectly, like heterotrophs, from the energy of the sunlight captured through photosynthesis. So really, photosynthesis is important for plants, but it's also important for a lot of other life on Earth. That's how energy gets into ecosystems and travels up the food chain. Okay, so let's just take a minute to revisit our essential questions and objectives for today's lesson. It's now the end of the lesson, so are you able to explain how the sun supplies living things with the energy that they need? And are you able to describe what happens during the process of photosynthesis? So this wraps up our lesson on photosynthesis for today. If you have any questions, please reach out to me or I will see you guys in live class. Thanks.